You are listening to another No Fair Remembering Stuff, the Tuesday edition of the Professional Left podcast, and available wherever you get your podcasts and at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There is a Patreon button at that website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at the Professional Left Podcast, P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
And it's not safe for work.
As regular listeners know, usually on the No Fair Remembering Stuff podcast, we work very hard to try to bring to life important people and events which have been forgotten due to, the passage of time or their relative obscurity, or more often, they've been memory holed as very inconvenient or dangerous by the American political media or the Republican Party. We've talked about topics ranging from George Wallace's 1968 third-party presidential bid to Wilbur Mills and Fannie Fox, which is a fascinating and weird story that you probably enjoyed if you heard it. And we talked about the end of the world. But today we're going to do something a little unusual that may be triggering for some of you. So if you choose to skip it, we sure understand, and we'll catch up with you the next time.
Yeah, it was a little bit triggering for us, I got to say.
It was. I had a really hard time getting through this, researching it and writing it, and just without wanting to, curl up in a ball and cry or stab somebody. Yeah.
Yeah, because we're going to talk about COVID and Donald Trump's failure at COVID. And the working title of this episode is 2020 Vision, because we're going to spend this episode remembering what was going on just 4 years ago. And Driftglass, I know, depended on the Biden-Harris campaign for this. He's been doing a very good job of reminding everybody that 4 years ago, you were not better off.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to talk about why so many people are so determined not to remember it. And some of that is political convenience, and some of it is human psychology.
Absolutely.
So let's set the scene. On February 21st, 2020, and who was president then, Driftglass? Donald Trump was president.
Coolidge, I think Coolidge. Was it Coolidge? No?
No, it was Donald Trump. But on February 21st, the first person-to-person transmission of COVID-19 in Italy was reported, which proved that it was contagious. This rapidly led to the largest infection chain outside Asia to date.
That major lockdown in Italy, the government banning travel for about a quarter of the population and canceling many public gatherings nationwide. And for the first time, look at this, Pope Francis live streaming his Sunday prayer, hoping to keep away large crowds. More than 360 people have now died of the coronavirus in Italy, the most outside of China, and nearly 1,500 new cases were reported just in the past 24 hours. Here's ABC's Jennifer Eccleston.
In Italy tonight, 16 million people in the country's hot zone now in lockdown.
And one of the key words you see over and over again in documentation about the pandemic is rapidly. How rapidly everything happened. And that's part of the reason people have such difficulty keeping it all straight, because everything happened so very fast. The first recorded case in the United States was reported in January of 2020.
Now to growing concerns about the deadly coronavirus officially hitting the U.S. Here's what we know. A Washington state resident fell ill after returning from Wuhan, China, where the outbreak began. Officials now say more than 400 people have been sickened and 9 people have died. The World Health Organization is holding an emergency meeting right now.
By March, the NBA had shut down indefinitely, practically in the middle of a game.
In the fourth, and Clyde, we're just getting the word in our headphones from our producer, Spencer Julian, about some very sobering news. The NBA has decided to suspend game play following the conclusion of tonight's games. Now, during the hiatus of the suspension, they'll figure out and try to determine what the next steps will be. But the word that just came out just moments ago is the NBA is going to temporarily suspend the season from now. Who knows what's going to happen going forward.
Huge Hollywood productions were shut down, tried to restart, and then were shut down again because of COVID.
Mission Impossible 7. stopped in its tracks by the pandemic again. Filming of the highly anticipated Tom Cruise sequel shut down again after at least one member of the production tested positive for COVID-19.
This was now indisputably a global pandemic, which was lethal, highly contagious, and for which there was no cure. On March 13th, 2020, the Trump administration declared a state of national emergency. Death rates were skyrocketing, hospitals were overflowing, and from personal protective equipment to ventilators, there wasn't nearly enough basic medical supplies to go around. And to add to all of that, everything began shutting down.
COVID-19, the disease that defined our lives in 2020.
2020 is now the deadliest year in U.S. history.
Since late March, the U.S. has led the world with the most cases and the most deaths, now at more than 334,000.
If the epicenter of the coronavirus outbreak in Europe is in Lombardy province in northern Italy, then the absolute center of this epidemic is here in the town of Bergamo. More people have died here than anywhere else, and they still are every day. The virus storm swept through these beautiful ancient streets. This medieval town and its modern city is utterly locked down. Only a few venture out. Everyone knows someone who has died or is ill, and everyone is scared.
The breaking news, stay at home. That is the order tonight from 4 state governors as the coronavirus pandemic spreads. New York, California, Illinois, and Connecticut all ordering non-essential employees to stay home. Those orders cover 75 million people across the United States. New York's governor today telling non-essential businesses in his state to reduce their workforce to 0.
In the spike of a pandemic, comfort for some teachers and families at Milford Exemptive School District.
I think that there is some relief that they are going to be remote. They're definitely concerned about their safety, student safety, and the well-being of their families and other families.
In Clermont County, school officials are moving some of their students to remote learning to try and slow the spread of COVID-19. Milford High School had 301 students in quarantine at the high school, mostly from one student. So starting today, the high school went to remote learning and all extracurricular activities are canceled.
And when we say everything, you remember that meat packing plants were shutting down. Grocery stores were shutting. Everything was shutting down. This was not a supply chain problem. This was a complete stasis, an economic stasis. Everything stopped. And in that universe, our experience was probably a lot like yours. You know, we all shared a big common traumatic event. Like most people, at least in the beginning, we were under quarantine, in fact, in our very own home twice because, you know, kids are so dirty and they catch things. And so, yeah, we were in lockdown twice in our own house. Our church went remote. That was really weird and interesting, and that's actually still paid some long-term benefits, but it was very strange at the time. Going to the grocery store, you might remember, was a whole project. It was a whole thing. It was like in our house, I ran it like the decontamination procedure in the Andromeda strain. You know, burn your clothes, etc. You order in advance and you mask up, and then you pick it up with no contact. You open the boot of the car and nobody touch anything. And oh my God, the hunt for N95 masks was insane. It was quite the adventure. Those same N95 masks are now on sale by the dozen for next to nothing at Lowe's anytime you want them. So it's a different world now, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And then there was the Lysoling and Cloroxing of everything to wipe everything down. I believe I was Lysoling money that I was getting.
You did. When you got money back from the store because you paid cash.
Yep.
You brought it back and laid it out on the back porch and sprayed it.
Well, the Lysol I laid out in the bedroom and sprayed it.
Oh.
But the back porch had all of our food. I would wipe down melons and wipe down, because nobody knew any better. And it seemed to me an abundance of caution was called for, considering how many people were dying every day. Mm-hmm. Except, of course, we couldn't find Clorox wipes or alcohol wipes or hydrogen peroxide at some point. So I ended up getting itty bitty tiny alcohol wipes, like for swabs that you give for an injection. And
I still have a box of those.
Yeah, because that's
left over. Because alcohol swabs.
That's what we had. Little tiny alcohol swabs. And of course, you go over to YouTube and it teaches you how to make your own homemade Clorox wipes with just a little gumption and some vinegar and some salt and a coffee can and some paper towel, which I did and used. I mean, I made it and used. there was, we were delivering also at the same time meals to school kids who were all on lockdown. And that was a whole adventure because there was so much logistics involved. I believe Junior Dude and I went out and did that a few times with a local community group. And it was great. It felt wonderful. But we had to reorder the entire community to make it possible to prepare the meals, pick the meals up, deliver them to people who were living in trailers and didn't want to see us every day. And that was, but we did it. On the other hand, if you wanted gasoline, the local gas station would probably pay you to come by and take some of that unsold inventory off their hands because nobody was driving anywhere.
Mm-hmm. And it wasn't all bad. People did cope and pitch in all kinds of different ways. A local Chicago distillery switched over from making booze to making hand sanitizer, which was in short supply everywhere. Every evening at 7 p.m., New York City residents would open their windows to salute the city's medical workers with banging pots and applause.
Yep.
The National Orchestra of France played together on YouTube from their living rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of choral groups did the same thing, sang into their computers, and it was harmonized by their director or audio coordinator.
And there were YouTube DJs who really, played, and it was wonderful. It was wonderful these people did these things for everybody.
I want you to talk for a minute about trivia.
Oh, trivia was a lifeline for us.
Yeah.
We like playing trivia, and Trivia for Shut-ins got started locally, and we played, I would say, religiously.
Mm-hmm. Every week.
We loved it. We enjoyed it. We could be in contact with people. We could have fun. And it was something to remind us that there were people living outside of our four walls. Mm-hmm. And that it was cool and interesting, and there was no cheating, and we were all, on our honor. And, we've met those people, at least one of them in real life before or after, and it was a blast. But it really did keep us in touch with the world and kept us, grounded.
And realizing you can have a little fun while the world is dying. I mean, it's kind of hard to deal with that mentally, and how everyone's afraid of dying at that point.
Absolutely. And well, remember, we had to have talks with the kids about this wasn't your fault. You're being cheated. You're being cheated of your experience. You're being cheated of prom. You're being cheated of a year of school, of socializing. And believe me, these young people who lived under this roof were socializing people. They missed their friends terribly. And so, which is why they probably dragged COVID into our house. But, we're all past that and we're all over that. But it was a time when you really did have to be kind of calm and understanding and open-hearted and everybody's in this together. We had to remind ourselves everyone's in this
Friday, together. I just want to get back to trivia for a minute because last Friday.
Yeah, that's right.
2024.
Yep.
We went May 2024 to an in-person trivia to benefit the local Animal Protective League, which, no one made jokes about shooting a dog.
Nope.
Even because that's just, you don't do that at this place. Mm-hmm. And there were 300 people there in one room.
Packed, wall to wall.
Yep. Wall to wall. We were at a table with 11 people.
Yep.
And we were doing trivia and fun and great. It's great. We had a good time. Came in like fifth, I think.
Yeah.
The questions were wildly easy or wildly hard. No in between. But Drift Class, you looked at me and you were kind of serious in your face. And I was like, what's wrong? And you said, well, I thought this would never happen again.
Right.
During COVID, I thought we would never get back to this.
4 years ago, couldn't imagine this ever happening again.
Yeah.
Couldn't imagine. I mean, I assumed at some point, someday, after they found a cure, a decade from now, and half the world had been wiped out or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I have a short story I'm still working on that I'll finish one of these days about the plague, about the end of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't seem like a really good time to, ask to try to get a story about the plague published during the COVID plague. That seems kind of silly. But it really seemed improbable that the life we are living now would ever come back in anything like the way we're living it now. And here we are, and a lot of people didn't make it, but
a lot of people didn't make it. Yeah. And I have a sister-in-law that didn't make it, who was traveling overseas right around this time.
Well,
and she died.
It was, and you've mentioned this earlier today. This is like a little bit like, and we weren't there, so we can't speak first person, but this is like World War I.
Yeah.
It touched everybody.
Yep.
And nobody wanted to talk about it afterwards. Nobody wanted to mention it.
No.
It was just this massive global trauma that everybody just wanted to get past and move on with their lives.
And people watched a lot of TV.
Yeah.
It was a golden age of television. It still is, but streaming services became a lot more popular. And Driftglass and I just kept on podcasting week after week after week, because that's what we do.
Hey, I mean, I was making jokes on, Facebook. This is a writer's dream.
Yeah.
I'm stuck in a house with nothing to do but read and write and read and write, and I'm antisocial anyway. What's the downside, people? What's the problem? But all joking aside, let's just pause for a moment to review the mindset of the average Republican going into this crisis and see if we can all guess how they'll come out of it, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
Like a typical Republican believes that they are constantly being oppressed by liberal conspiracies carried out by you, me, George Soros, and the deep state, right?
Yep. And we saw it today in Congress.
Yeah.
Where Congress people, Republican Congress people on the floor of the House of Representatives saying that America's problems are caused by a vast liberal conspiracy to steal America's freedom.
Yeah.
Gas stoves and crypto are being stolen from you by the deep state, by liberal Democrats. Yeah. And that's today. That's as we record.
Yeah.
That's the priority of House Republicans.
But that's been the party line for decades. Going back to Newt Gingrich, going back to Spiro Agnew. We're always the bad. We're always the bad guys. We're always the demons. We're always the monster under the bed. They also believe that whining and threatening and being gigantic assholes about everything all the time is the way to get what they want. Be like Trump. Be an asshole. Have tantrums. Hold your breath. Threaten people. They really do believe they can bully and bullshit reality into whatever shape they want it to be.
Yep. And that they would win all the time at everything if it weren't for Democrats cheating.
Yeah. Yes. The number of times that, Trump says cheater, it's cheating. It's all cheating. And of course, all of this is being covered up by the liberal media. And that anyone who tells them otherwise, who tells them anything they don't want to hear, is all part of the fake news liberal media conspiracy. Which brings us to the right's reaction to COVID, which began at the very top with lying about it. Lying about a cruise ship, which at the time was docked in a port in Oakland, California. Do you remember that incident, Blue Gal?
I do. And this is from Business Insider, March 6th, 2020. You know who was president throughout all of 2020, Driftglass?
Roosevelt.
Donald Trump.
Roosevelt. It was Roosevelt. I'm pretty sure it was Roosevelt.
Quote, Trump said he wants to keep Grand Princess cruise passengers on the ship so that U.S. coronavirus numbers don't double. I like the numbers being where they are. I don't need to have the numbers double because of one ship that wasn't our fault, Trump said in a Fox News interview, unquote. And there it is. When faced with a reality you don't like, you just lie about it. All that Trump cared about was keeping the real magnitude of the danger to the American people covered up. That's Trump in a nutshell. Rigging accounts to make himself look richer than he was, lying about the value of his properties, lying about hush money payments to porn stars, blatantly lying about inaugural crowd sizes.
Biggest crowd ever. Period.
Just make the lies true. Keep repeating them until people give up arguing with you.
Right.
And then it's the truth.
And then you can make liberals cry because ha ha, you can't make me tell the truth. And when it came to COVID, all he cared about was keeping the numbers down, even if that meant putting millions and millions of lives at risk to do it. This is from NBC News, September 9th, 2020. Quote, Trump told Bob Woodward he knew in February that COVID-19 was deadly stuff, but wanted to play it down. It's not just old people, Trump told Woodward, acknowledging the gravity of the disease. The Washington Post reported, this is deadly stuff, Trump told Woodward in a February 7th phone call. You just breathe the air and that's how it's passed, Trump told Woodward, according to the Post. And so that's a very tricky one. That's a very delicate one. It's also more deadly than even your strenuous flu. The book says Trump was given dire warnings in January about the virus that would lead to a worldwide pandemic in March. This will be the biggest national security threat you face in your presidency, National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien told Trump on January 28th, according to the book. This is going to be the roughest thing you face, unquote.
Yep.
And of course, neither Trump nor Woodward shared that information with the American
No,
people.
they didn't share that information because book deal.
Yeah.
But Trump continued to lie to the public about the danger posed by the virus and repeatedly compared it to the flu. Quote, "We only have 5 people. Hopefully everything's going to be great," Trump said January 30th. A few days later, he said, "We pretty much shut it down coming in from China." Despite the early warning about the virus's deadliness and its ability to be transmitted through the air, Trump continued to hold packed political rallies throughout February and told reporters at the White House on February 27th, "It's the flu. This is like a flu." On March 9th, this was weeks after he told Woodward that the coronavirus was more than 5 times deadlier than the flu. Trump tweeted, quote, "So last year, 37,000 Americans died from the common flu. It averages between 27,000 and 70,000 per year. Nothing is shut down. Life and the economy go on. At this moment, there are 546 confirmed cases of coronavirus with 22 deaths. Think about that."
Mm-hmm.
Unquote.
Yeah. Now, you all might remember that Trump's personal recklessness got Herman Cain killed. He got one of his allies, one of the top Republicans in the field running for president, or who was one of his supporters, killed. And you might remember that he very nearly killed Chris Christie by not telling him he was contagious during debate prep when Christie was inches from his face. But what we have found to be much harder to remember is the daily drumbeat of madness from the White House. It wasn't 1 or 2 or 10 lies. It was this constant barrage of lies every day, the petulant whining, and the inexcusably shitty, irresponsible public behavior from the President of the United States. We need to talk about why so much of our very recent shared history seems to have just vanished from people's memories, and why it seems clear that there are 2 different causes for this. One for Republicans and one for normal people.
Republicans versus normal people is how Drift Glass likes to frame things.
I plant my feet and tell the truth, Blue Gal. That's all I can do. But to do that, we first need to remind ourselves, as kind of painful as it is, of the kind of madness that was coming at us from the White House every goddamn day.
And I think it's one of the reasons it's so important to do that. One of the reasons it's so important to go through the madness is when you're in the middle of it and you're quarantined and you're isolated and locked in your house and all you have is the television to tell you what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to see how crazy it is.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to survive it.
Right. You're
and then when you think back on it, it's like, how did I survive that?
Yeah.
And how did he get away with it?
You're walking through a blizzard.
Yeah.
And your head is down. You're just one foot after another. Don't want to freeze to death. Don't want to get blown over. Don't want to die. And you're this blizzard is coming at you all day, and you're just focused on right here, right now, getting to the next place.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you look back on it, it's hard to remember that you walk through hell on earth every day.
Yeah.
And the reason this was happening to you was this asshole that Republicans nominated and elected to be president of the United States.
And want to be president again.
Yeah.
So we're going to go over this just a little bit. On March 6, 2020, Trump was still pushing his deranged argument that coronavirus wasn't that bad because a lot of people die from the flu. He then pivoted to a plug for Fox News and the ratings his town hall garnered the night before.
Mm-hmm.
Then a CNN reporter asked a question, and this was Trump's response. Quote, "Who are you from, by the way? I don't watch CNN. That's why I don't recognize you. I don't watch CNN because CNN is fake news," unquote. Then, quote, "The coronavirus tests are all perfect. Like the letter was perfect. The transcription was perfect. This was not as perfect as that, but pretty good," unquote. Trump went on to defend throwing out the federal government's pandemic preparedness response protocols over his first 3 years in office because, quote, "I just think this is something that you can never really think is going to happen."
Yeah.
Unquote.
Sit with that for a minute. Sit with that. The Obama administration had left behind a very extensive plan for dealing with a pandemic. And Trump wiped his ass with it and threw it away. And they said, well, just who knew this was going to happen? I don't know. Then he went, this is the same interview, by the way. Then he went on this long, crazy ramble about what a genius he is and how well he understands public health. Maybe better than anyone else. Maybe better than anyone else in the world. He wrapped up by smearing Jay Inslee, the governor of Washington State, which was, at that moment, the center of the coronavirus outbreak. Quote, I told Mike Pence not to be complimentary of the governor because that governor is a snake, unquote. This was a fraction of 1 day's worth of Trump during COVID.
That's 1 day.
That's 1 fucking day of this guy.
Yep. On April 2nd, 2020, as Americans were dying without PPE or other life-saving supplies, I remember this. Trump dispatched Jared Kushner to attack blue state governors.
Yep.
This is not their PPE. It's our PPE.
Ours. It
belongs to the federal government, so it's ours.
So it's Jared's
They
personally.
need to get their own.
Right. I remember that.
He whined. On that same day, a reporter asked Donald Trump how would governors have known to prepare for the pandemic sooner without federal guidance. They rely on the federal government to provide them with health information.
Right.
Trump replied, quote, they have experts. How would I have known? Unquote.
Remember.
And of course, we know he did know.
He fucking well knew. Of course he knew.
How would I have known? Unquote. Then he went on Twitter to attack states that were asking for personal protective equipment, calling them complainers and saying they have insatiable appetites and are never satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
Politics?
Politics? The very next day, April 3rd, 2020, after the CDC announced mask guidance to help stop the spread of the pandemic, killing thousands of Americans, Trump replied, quote, you don't have to do it. I don't think I'm going to be doing it, unquote. April 5th, Trump is still promoting quack cures like hydroxychloroquine. When asked about it, he said, I've seen things that I sort of like. What do I know? I'm not a doctor, unquote. On the same day, on stage with Dr. Fauci, a reporter asked Fauci, what is the medical evidence of hydroxychloroquine? Trump then intervened. Quote, do you know how many times he's answered that question? 15 times, unquote. Reporter asked, well, he's your medical expert, correct? Trump, you don't have to ask that question. He answered that question 15 times, unquote.
This is Trump on April 6th. Quote, Democrats shouldn't be allowed to win the election. We have done a great job, unquote. I'm sorry, that just makes me laugh.
Yeah.
And cry at the same time.
Yep.
When asked about testing, Trump passed the buck. Quote, hospitals can do their own testing.
Sure.
States can do their own testing, unquote.
Sure. Yeah, you can make your own Clorox wipes at home. Why can't you just make your own tests at home and test yourself? Why are you asking the federal government to, respond to a national disaster? On April 7th, as much of the nation was under quarantine and the death toll was skyrocketing, Trump went on national TV to complain about Americans voting by mail. Quote, mail ballots are a very dangerous thing for this country because they're cheaters, unquote. The same day as Americans were dying and hospitals were in need, Trump went on national TV to declare mission accomplished. Quote, I was right. The group was right. They're not needing nearly as many beds as they thought. They're not needing as many ventilators as they thought, unquote.
April 7th was also the day that Trump called for defunding the World Health Organization.
Yeah, because it was giving him bad news, right? It was giving him sad things, making him sad. On April 8th, Trump went right on pretending the pandemic would magically disappear. Instead of fixing his failed response, he claimed it would just go away sooner rather than later.
And on April 9th, Trump was asked what he had to say to the 16 million Americans who had lost their jobs in the last 3 weeks. Trump, quote, said, now, that's just my feeling. It's a strong feeling. I've had good, proper feelings about a lot of things over the years. I think we're going to do well.
In case you're wondering, that's just insane gibberish by a crazy person who's lying.
He was also asked about the Paycheck Protection Program because, quote, small businesses are saying that their banks don't know how to access this money. They can't figure it out. So where does the fault lie? And I want to remind people how Republicans reacted when there were problems with the Obamacare website.
Oh, it wasn't just Republicans. It was David Brooks. It was the end of the world. It was probably his Vietnam. It was probably going to be the end of all things.
And so here comes this federal government program to help small businesses meet their payroll, and banks didn't know how to do it. Trump's reply, quote, "I don't think there's a fault."
Shut up and go away. Everything's fine. The next day, on April 10th, the reporter asked, what do you say to the 16 million Americans who filed for unemployment and are in need? Trump answers, number one, I love them. Number two, we have the best economy in the world, unquote. So, when people are bitching that Biden is talking about the relative strength of the economy, when it is strong, when we are recovering from the debacle that Trump led us through, how about y'all shut up about that and remember what Trump's answer was to any question about the economy, which was, we're doing great, everyone shut up, everything's fine. The reporter also asked, had the country been better prepared, would we have more tests? And Trump's answer was, you shouldn't be asking that, unquote.
I mean, my God, people want to reelect this person.
And no wonder people have problems remembering this. It's insane.
Yeah.
It's fucking insane.
On April 16th, as Americans were dying, and, we needed tests.
Right.
To find out who had coronavirus and who didn't, so that those people could quarantine and we could reduce the spread of the disease.
Right. You could do contact tracing. You could cut it off before it spread further.
Right. Trump complained that it was ridiculous that he was supposed to do testing in parking lots in the middle of a certain state that's 2,000 miles away. Quote, the governor of Washington state said he can't find a cotton. A swab is a very easy thing to get. And a swab is a little more sophisticated than a Q-tip. You got to be able to go out and find. The federal government shouldn't be forced to go and do everything.
Yeah. Lazy, lying scumbag. Now, let's pause there for just a moment and talk about why so many normal people have forgotten most or all of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's at least in part because we have been trying to cope with what's called institutional betrayal.
Right. This is from Ann P. DePrince, professor of psychology at the University of Denver, and Joan M. Cook, associate professor of psychiatry at Yale University, writing at The Conversation, March 25th, 2020. So right in the middle of all of this, they are writing about the institutional betrayal of Donald Trump. There's a name for situations when systems that are supposed to take care of others do harm. Institutional betrayal. As trauma psychologists, we see that betrayal by the Trump administration, and we offer some lessons from behavioral science to guide the government response to this global health crisis. Again, this is March of 2020, they're writing. Traumatic events involve death or the threat of death, serious injury or sexual assault. Those types of stress, and the current health crisis is one, deeply impact how people think and behave towards themselves, others, and the world. For example, a 2004 study examined the mental health of those quarantined due to the SARS outbreak. Nearly 1/3 sampled reported depression or post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD symptoms. The longer they were quarantined, the worse their symptoms. That research, starting more than 2 decades ago, shows special harm is done when the abuse or violence is a betrayal. That is, perpetrated by someone the victim depends on, such as a parent, caregiver, lover, or trusted authority figure. Called betrayal trauma theory by pioneering psychologist Jennifer Freyd, years of additional studies now provide unequivocal evidence these high betrayal traumas are uniquely harmful to both a survivor's physical and psychological health. And they do use the example of the Catholic Church and the child abuse cases. You know, the institution that you expect to be competent and to protect you and to be there for you completely lets you down.
And actually doesn't just fail. They betray you.
They do harm.
They actively harm you. Yeah.
And do harm. Right.
Yep.
The article continues. With the COVID-19 crisis, government agencies, local, state, and federal, are charged with taking actions to support the well-being of its people. But so far, much of the federal government response fits the definition of institutional betrayal, whether shutting offices that should have long been preparing for the pandemic, or passing along inaccurate public health information. From those actions, dangerous circumstances were created. unquote.
Yep. And this is from a friend of the pod, Bob Cesca. He's got his own podcast. You might have heard of him, Bob Cesca. Hey, Bob. He summed it up pretty well. Quote, Trump didn't manage the pandemic. He managed his own PR and tiny, brittle ego. And because of it, 400,000 Americans, including many of his own supporters, suffocated to death in his final 10 months, unquote. Here's the thing. Our own government had betrayed us. They had lied to us about matters of life and death. They had smirked and shrugged as thousands died and tried to blame it all on all the usual suspects. This wasn't just a massive shock to our system. This was a massive trauma that followed on the heels of other massive traumas like the war in Iraq and the collapse of the global economy. Trump's COVID-19 response was the worst betrayal of this country by its leaders until January 6, 2021, when these same thugs and ghouls and fascists tried to overthrow the government of the United States and install as dictator the same incompetent monster responsible for so many thousands of COVID deaths. So what in the name of Abraham, Martin, and John is so goddamn damaged and depraved with so many millions of Republicans that there is a non-trivial chance that they will re-elect that same guy, Donald Trump, in 2024?
Well, it's because they've been trained for decades to practice an entirely different kind of forgetting that is indistinguishable from Orwell's depiction of doublethink in the novel 1984. Quote, to know and not to know, to be conscious of complete truthfulness while telling carefully constructed lies, to hold simultaneously two opinions which canceled out, knowing them to be contradictory and believing in both of them, to use logic against logic, to repudiate morality while laying claim to it, to believe that democracy was impossible and that the party was the guardian of democracy, to forget whatever it was necessary to forget, then to draw it back into memory again at the moment it was needed, and then promptly to forget it again, and above all, to apply the same process to the process itself. That was the ultimate subtlety. Consciously to induce unconsciousness, and then, once again, to become unconscious of the act of hypnosis you had just performed. Even to understand the word doublethink involved the use of doublethink, unquote. And we see it all the time on social media with people thinking and insisting that Biden was president in 2020.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Biden wasn't elected and Trump is still president.
Right.
But Trump can be reelected president.
Right.
But Trump is president only of the good army.
That's right.
And JFK's coming back.
Right. Or maybe RFK Jr.
And you can hold all of that in your mind at the same time or forget parts of it when you don't need it for your argument.
Right. And just use it like a bag of tricks. You know, whatever argument comes up, you have a response to it, even if it contradicts every other response, because you don't believe any of it. All you believe in is the cult of the Republican Party and Donald Trump. And whatever they do is good with you. Whatever they say is the truth. Whoever they shit on today is the enemy. And this is frankly why trying to persuade or even debate with a Republican is just a colossal waste of time. Over the course of decades, they have trained their little brains to the point where they literally no longer think as we do. If you remind them of all the bullshit they were running during the Clinton years, they'll either stare at you blankly like, what are you talking about? Or they'll suddenly remember all the little details about how Hillary Clinton murdered Vince Foster, which is an absolute fact and everyone knows it. And why are you lying, liberal? Ask him about George Bush and is like, never heard of him. Who? No, I'm an independent constitutional conservative. Never heard of George Bush. Their 8-year-long racist primal scream during the Obama years, completely memory hold, have no recollection of that at all. And Trump was the greatest president ever. And they remember distinctly that Biden was in charge when COVID hit, not Trump. And if you show them proof to the contrary, well, that's all just fake news, courtesy of the Soros-funded liberal media conspiracy.
On April 17th, 2020, when Donald Trump was president of the United States.
Definitely was president, yep.
Trump went on Twitter and called on these same fascist zombies to, in all caps, liberate states with Democratic governors. After which his supporters showed up to the Michigan Capitol building with assault weapons, Confederate flags, and swastikas.
is ready to stand defiant against this governor and open up business tomorrow. Lock her up! 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 Lock her up!
I know that people are angry, and that's okay. And if you want to take it out and send it my way, if it makes you feel better, that's fine. We know that this rally endangered people. When people gather that way without masks, they were in close proximity, they were touching one another, that's how COVID-19 spreads.
2 days later, on April 19th, Trump was asked about those supporters who showed up to government buildings with assault weapons, Confederate flags, and swastikas in Michigan. Trump: people feel that way. It was a very orderly group of people. Some governors have gone too far, unquote. A reporter asked, your supporters had Nazi flags out there. They are who? Said Trump. Nazi flags, said the reporters. I didn't see that, said Trump. These people love our country. Deny, deny, deny.
Yep. Just keep denying. Keep lying, keep denying. It works. It works. On April 18th, Trump complained that inquiries into COVID test shortages were a, quote, partisan witch hunt against him, unquote. On April 19th, Trump went on national TV to complain about states in dire need of help. Quote, now they want to have us, the federal government, do the testing. You can't have it both ways, unquote.
April 20th, Trump refused to invoke the Defense Production Act to help prevent more Americans from dying. Trump said, we don't want to embarrass any of the companies. They don't want to be embarrassed, and I don't want to embarrass them. A reporter asked, will you invoke the Defense Production Act to force companies to ramp up production of cotton swabs? Trump said, we really don't need it. We go up, but we use it, and then sometimes all they have to do is see it coming. And this is like word salad. It makes no sense.
It's a 4-year-old caught doing something naughty, just throwing out words because
Then someone asked, there's bipartisan outcries that there's not enough testing. Why do you think it's a personal attack on you? Trump said, it's mostly partisan. Look at the maps. You have maps with so many different locations.
Yes. Maps often have different locations on them.
They do.
That's why they are maps. On April 22nd, Trump went on national TV to complain about media coverage of himself while Americans were dying. Quote, the fake news media would say he didn't do the job. He didn't do his job. Trump didn't do his job because you have a lot of bad reporting out there. It's very sad, unquote. On April 22nd, this is him addressing Dr. Birx. Trump, doctor, wouldn't you say there's a good chance that COVID will not come back? Dr. Birx, looking very meek, we don't know.
April 23rd was a very big day for Trump's COVID train wreck. This was the day that Dr. Birx reacted in horror as Trump told Americans to inject bleach on national television.
Mm-hmm.
This prompted Lysol to issue a public statement warning people not to use their products internally. And there were people mixing bleach with mouthwash to try to kill coronavirus.
You gargle with it, who knows? Maybe, just, God.
This was also Trump on April 23rd. Supposing we hit the body with a tremendous light. I think you said that hasn't been checked, but you're going to test it. Supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do either through the skin or some other way. Sounds interesting, unquote. This was also the day that Trump suggested he wouldn't help states in need that didn't vote for him. Quote, it's interesting that states in trouble do happen to be blue. It is interesting if you look around. The states that seem to have the problem happen to be Democrat. Then later, people don't like that statement very much. The fake news didn't like it at all. I just threw it out as a suggestion.
Just spitball it. Bleach, light up your ass. Just spitball it. I'm not a doctor.
And blame it on blue states.
Yeah.
Instead of being a leader to the country.
Yeah, I'm the leader of the United States, but I'm just making shit up as we go along, as we always do. This is on April 29th. A reporter asks, without a vaccine, why do you think the virus will just be gone? And Trump's answer, it's going to go. It's going to leave. It's going to be gone. It's going to be eradicated. And it might take longer. It might be in smaller sections, which, again, is his brain just collapsing inside of his soft skull. Trump on April 30th when you ask, how did we do? I have to say it's because the news is so fake and so corrupt. I think we did a spectacular job. Trump on May 1st. Our death totals are really very, very strong. We are proud of the job we have done. Yes, his death totals are very, very strong, because that's a word he uses a lot for stupid people. May 3rd, Trump said committees looking into his failed COVID response were partisan and, quote, just looking for trouble, unquote. Also on May 3rd, Trump said it was a good thing that millions of Americans are jobless on his watch because they would go on to get better jobs.
Also on May 3rd came this, quote, look, I am greeted with the hostile press, the likes of which no president has ever seen. The closest would be that gentleman right up there. They always said Lincoln. Nobody got treated worse than Lincoln. I believe I am treated worse. We all know what happened to Lincoln.
Yeah.
On May 5th, a reporter asked, your economic advisor said this unemployment rate could be around 19%. Numbers we haven't seen since the Great Depression. What is your plan to get the country out of this ditch? And the president of the United States, Donald Trump, said, I view what we have now is, here we are, it is what it is.
What you gonna do? Boy, when I find the person responsible for this, I'm gonna give him what for, And it just went on and on and on like this with no end in sight. And you know what? We haven't even mentioned the many, many, many wild shit, all the wild shit was coming out of the mouths of prominent Trump supporters. Perhaps you remember that in March of 2020, the lieutenant governor of Texas said that grandparents should be willing to die to save the economy because, for the kids. Do it for the kids, Meemaw. The kids need the economy to be cooking along, so why don't you just give up and die? At first, the only protection, of course, was wearing masks and staying indoors. That's all we had. Reasonable precautions against a once-in-a-century pandemic, and against which there was a violent backlash on the right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then came a medical miracle.
Mm-hmm.
The vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to read this this is from 2022, but it's really important. This is Stat News. Why COVID-19 vaccines are a freaking miracle. 2 years into the COVID-19 pandemic, it's easy to lament all that has come to pass. The devastating losses, the upending of what we regarded as normal ways of life, the sheer relentlessness of it all. But let's stop for a moment and consider something else that may have escaped you. You have witnessed and you are a beneficiary of a freaking miracle. If you are reading this article, it's a safe bet that you have been vaccinated. You may even have had 3 doses. Many of your family members, friends, colleagues, neighbors, even strangers you pass on the street are probably in the same boat. Unquote. And against the vaccine, there has also been a nutso backlash reaction, mostly from the right.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that Trump tries to take credit for.
And gets booed.
And gets booed by his own people.
Because everyone knows the jab is just liberal conspiracy to put a microchip in your brain so that the Bill Gates can monitor your thoughts. Everyone knows this.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the virus is still out there, probably mutating. But now we have real weapons in our arsenal to use the next time it or one of its cousins pays a visit.
Yeah. And that's a miracle.
Yeah.
That is a miracle. I mean, at no other point in human history was this even possible, remotely possible, to do this in this amount of time with this efficaciousness against the disease that was so dangerous and contagious and lethal. Unfortunately, a dangerously deranged Republican Party is also still out there. And it's also still mutating every day to something ever crazier and ever more violent. And when it comes to dealing with that very real threat, the only weapons we have are the same ones we've always had. Those weapons are our willingness to see things as they are, to remember how they got this way, to speak those truths out loud on whatever platforms we have access to, and to vote accordingly.
Amen.
Welcome. Thank you for coming to our TED Talk.
Don't forget, we really need more Patreons to make this podcast fly. So if you can spare $5, please spare $5. This is our 801st episode.
801. Lucky 801.
Professional Left. And you can visit our Patreon at patreon.com/proleftpod. And we thank you so much for that. And we'll see you next time.
We will see you next time.
Professional Left podcast No Fair Remembering Stuff Tuesday edition is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2024-25 DGBG Productions.